Buenos dias, my friend. How are you? Welcome to the practical application section of the Be Still and Listen course. And, for me, this is a really exciting portion of the course because this is where I get to kind of take my hands off the wheel a little bit, provide some more guidance on questions we can ask in our meditation sessions. But ultimately, these sections are going to be about turning you loose to get into developing your own habits and practices. So throughout this entire course now, let's just kind of go back to the beginning. We started out roughly talking about, that we are a channel for divine loving consciousness. We are a channel for the creative intelligence of the universe, the creator. And we're here to be kind of a living, breathing expression of loving awareness in our own unique way. And from there, we got into talking about the chakras and the intuitive senses. We talked about meditation. Then we did the chakra balancing activation. And then we got into two practices that hopefully are going to be very helpful and supportive to you on your journey moving forward. So we did that journey to meet with a spirit guide. And hopefully you're still, continuing working with that journey. Perhaps it's evolved, to fit you and your own kind of style and approach that you are creating for yourself, or maybe it has kind of intuitively evolved for yourself. So hopefully you're doing that and you're working with that dimension of this work and these practices. And then we gave you the higher self meditation, which was another way into getting connected to a higher dimension of loving consciousness, doing a check-in with each of the chakra centers, and allowing whatever's going to come in through those intuitive senses that we talked about. So we've got two practices: a journey to meet our guides, and that journey to meet our guide could be something that we practice over and over and over again. And when we get to meet our guide, we can ask more than just the three questions that I had prompted you to ask. We could get into a serious sort of dialogue and communication with our guides at that point. And then when we can also use the higher self meditation to, again, connect to a loving dimension of consciousness. And in that space, begin to work with our own energy, our bodies, our field, to open up a dialogue as well. And that's what we're going to explore here in the next several weeks of this practical application. I'm going to give you some prompts each week to work with a different dimension of yourself. But where we're going to start today is we're going to start with the spiritual dimension of ourselves. So the way that I have set this up from the get-go, going all the way back to the philosophy and ethics of tuning into our intuitive power, is that commitment to seeking what is loving, what is true, what is wise in a spiritual sense, and sort of being open to receiving that information and that guidance, and then learning how to trust that if we honor what is true, what is loving, and what is wise, that what is truly meant for us in a deep spiritual way will ultimately follow. So there's this great sort of give and take there between ourselves and the divine, where we're saying, okay, I'm open and receptive to this, and I'm willing to surrender. I'm willing to surrender some of my own ego, and willing to surrender some of my own desires, maybe in a sense of what has been conditioned in us, or culturally what we have been brought up in, or just simply what our ego from a very human level is seeking and desiring. But we're creating space for that spiritual dimension of ourselves to unfold and be expressed in the world in a very honest and authentic way. And so in that way, the philosophy and ethics of this is really about committing ourselves to deeply knowing what is loving, what is true, and what is wise in a very spiritual sense. And then if we honor that, trusting that what is meant for us will follow, and we get to take action, embodied action, in relationship to that information. So today we're going to talk about doing some wisdom seeking in a spiritual sense. And as I was just saying, what's embedded though in this entire course is we're approaching this work from a spiritual sense at the end of the day. But we're going to talk about today very specifically kind of just sitting down and just asking a handful of what I would consider spiritual questions. And when I say that, I just kind of mean in a broader sense, looking at our lives through a wider lens, wider than just kind of our individualized self and our ego, and looking at life through the eyes of the soul and spirit, and through the eyes of the Creator. And in doing this, this is going to just kind of, this week, we're just going to focus our practice and our questions very specifically on spiritual matters. Where we're going to go from here is we're going to take a look at our health, we're going to look at work or career related stuff, and then we're also going to look at relationships. At the end of the day, though, they're all going to come back to looking at each of those aspects of our lives through a spiritual lens. So I just want to kind of drive that point home. When it comes to asking questions, when we're in meditation or we're working with guidance, what I say is that, is there a right way to do it? Yes, there's a right way to do it. The right way to do it is the way that works. I'm hoping to help you out a little bit with uncovering in a way that works, because it's been 2 decades of having this sort of inner dialogue that has led me to this point and to this material. And the one question that I've come down to, even though we're going to work through each and every, we're going to work through a couple different aspects of our lives or dimensions of our lives, there's one question that for me has been the most powerful and transformative. And that question is simply, what do I need to know today for my highest spiritual good? And what I love about this question is that it brings us into the present moment. It brings us into the now. So we're not worried about the past. We're not worried about the future. We're not anxious about either of those things. We're not even really kind of pondering or reflecting on that. We're looking at and we're asking divine consciousness to reveal to us, what do I need to know today for my highest spiritual good? So it puts us in the present moment, and it puts us in alignment with our highest spiritual good. Going back to what I was saying a little earlier, is that I've tried to frame all these practices and all this information and all this work in the context of working towards our higher self and our highest expression of our higher self, and how we can be an expression of divine loving consciousness in a really embodied in a unique way. So what do I need to know today for my highest spiritual good? For me, is still the question I ask every single day. It's the first question that I ask every single day when I do my own meditation practice and my own meditation check-in. It is the one question I will ask myself, like that I insist on asking myself every single day. If there's information that comes in and I have time, then I might dig a little deeper and do as much exploring as I can to get more information. That's totally dependent on what day it is, what the information is, and how it comes in. But it is the simplest and most powerful question that I've committed myself to every day. So that alone can be a practice for you this week. Just sitting down every single day and asking the question, what do I need to know today for my highest spiritual good? You can get into meditation, you could do a journey to meet your guide, and you can meet with a guide or an ancestor or a dimension of your higher self or the creator, and you can ask, what do I need to know today for my highest spiritual good? And you may get an intuitive answer. So remember to listen with all those intuitive senses, all of those senses that we've warmed up and exercised in this course. Listen with all those things, with your inner vision, your inner ears, with your feelings, with your deep knowings. Listen with all of that for what comes back when you ask that question. Now, if you have time and you're curious, we can get into some other questions too. So I'm going to hand over a couple other questions that might be fun for you to work with. Another question that might be good to work with is, what spiritual lesson am I working on right now? What spiritual lesson am I working on right now? Just asking that question. You could ask that any day of the week at any time, whether things are going really smooth in your life or things are a little chaotic. You can ask the question, what spiritual lesson am I working on right now? And then again, listen with your whole body. Get into that meditation, connect to loving awareness, connect to your spiritual guidance, and then ask, what is the spiritual lesson that I'm working on? And then listen with all your senses for the answer. Another good question to ask that I often ask in readings, is there anything I need to be made aware of that I'm not seeing clearly for my highest good? Is there anything I need to be made aware of that I'm not seeing clearly for my highest good? I love this question because it's an awesome opportunity for us to check in with our blind spots, those things that we might be kind of glazing over because we're either not willing to see the truth. Maybe there's just things that we haven't come into our awareness quite yet, in our conscious awareness. But this is an awesome way to confront any blind spots and sometimes any illusions we're having about what is going on in our life. I'll give you an example, something that actually comes up quite often. It's been interesting the last couple years, especially as we were making these really rapid shifts into just a higher dimension of consciousness, a more expanded awareness, and we're moving out of judgment. It feels like collectively, like there's a lot of folks that are kind of moving out of judgment and kind of, I don't know, negative mind, maybe we can call it. And one thing that comes up quite often in readings in that position is the good stuff, the good things that are going on. So sometimes we can be so focused on the shadow work and the drama and the tension, and the challenge of, being here on this planet and walking this path and fumbling our way through, this economy and family dynamics and all those other things. And it's interesting because what comes up a lot of times in the blind spot, at least when I read for people, is, but look at the good stuff that you have. It's so interesting how often we overlook, especially like if our basic needs are met. If our basic needs are met, if we've got food and we've got water and we've got a roof over our head, we've got clothing, that alone is something to be thankful for and something to acknowledge. Like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm moving through all these things, but also make sure I do acknowledge I am grateful for these things. So it's kind of interesting, there's this perspective, of gratitude, or bringing our awareness to don't overlook the good stuff. That sometimes pops up in the blind spot. Of course, other things will come up in that area as well. We might get some information around, a situation we're not seeing clearly. We might be asked to, pay attention to, someone else's words or their actions, or to take a closer look at a certain thing. And it's there to reveal something more truthful and honest about the situation in front of us that just maybe we weren't seeing because, we're in the honeymoon phase, or we're seeing the world through overly rose-colored glasses, and we kind of need to do a reality check-in. It's a fantastic question to ask ourselves. Is there anything that I am not seeing clearly that wants to be brought to my awareness for my highest good? Listen with all your senses and see what comes in. Another good question. This is more action-oriented. So for those of us who, we like to fix things or we like to do things, we could ask something like, how do I show up today for my highest good, or the highest good of all involved? What action can I take that serves my highest good and the highest good of all involved? So we add in that my highest good and the highest good of all involved now brings us into collaboration and thinking more, more holistically about our relationship to the world. So we can also ask these questions in that way, in a deep spiritual sense. How do I show up for my highest good and the highest good of all involved? And then listen to the inspiration, the guidance, and the information that wants to come in. So those are some really basic questions that we can begin to work with this week. Try them out. This week, I'm going to encourage you to get into meditation. If you can do it daily, please, you're going to be a spiritual rock star. If you could, got a little hiccup. If you can dive into this and do this daily, it would be fantastic. At minimum, try to do it at least 2 or 3 times. And if you're going to take some days in between, allow some information to, digest or integrate. But check in and ask from these deep spiritual perspective, what do I need to know today for my highest spiritual good? Is there anything I can do today? Or how can I show up for my highest good and the highest good of all involved? What spiritual lessons am I currently working on? And is there anything that wants to be brought to my awareness that I'm not seeing clearly that serves my highest good? And just work with those questions this week and see what comes up. Now, the cool thing is, this is the first week we're gonna go through this practical application. I'm gonna turn it over to you, and you're gonna choose whatever meditation practice, whatever modality you want to get into this space to have this conversation. I want you to make the choice about how to do that. And I want you to have this internal dialogue and keep track of it and journal it, so that when we come back to this in a few weeks, because we're going to go through health and work and relationships, but we're going to come back a second time to each of those subjects, those areas of our life, and we're going to do another check-in. And I wanted to do this because it's an excellent opportunity for us to kind of calibrate our intuition and to also give ourselves time to see if any of the inspiration or the understandings that come in, like what the practical application or the sort of practical influence that information had on the next several weeks. So we get to take the information that we learned this week in this check-in, and when we come back with the second check-in about, I don't know, 4 weeks from now, you'll get to see, oh yeah, that information came through and that's how this played out, or this information came through and I didn't listen to it and that's interesting. Okay, check. I'm going to pay attention to that next time. So this is an opportunity for us to get into the habit of kind of tracking what comes in, the information, putting what feels resonant into practice, and then just seeing how that works out and plays out. This process is never ending. Trust me, you'll be finally tuning and calibrating this intuitive dimension of yourself, hopefully from now and to the rest of your life, if this really feels, you feel connected to this work and to this approach. But this is an ongoing collaboration with the divine and the world around us and our higher self and us. But it's also an ongoing calibration between ourselves and our intuitive senses. So work with that this week. Write it down, document it if you can, because we're going to come back to these same questions in a few weeks, and it'll be interesting to see where you're at. So I'm really excited for you to run off and try this out. Please let me know if you have any questions. Engage with the prompt connected to this video, and don't be shy about jumping into the discussion or asking questions in the group. I'm so excited that we're diving into this section. So keep me posted. Good luck. Happy meditating, seeking, and wisdom asking, seeking. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Happy spiritual inquiring. And I'll see you in the next video. Adios.